President Biden reacting to the Rittenhouse acquittal, and he is not very happy about it. He put out a statement saying, quote, "While the verdict in Kenosha will leave many Americans feeling angry and concerned, myself included, we must acknowledge that the jury has spoken." The president also urging people to protest peacefully. And as you might remember, President Biden tweeted a video last year labeling Kyle Rittenhouse a white supremacist. And if you thought he might apologize for that, come on, man.
Do you stand by your past comment equating him to white supremacy?
Well, look, I stand by what the jury has concluded. The jury system works, and we have to abide by it.
What do you think the president was trying to say there?
I think he should have just stopped at that, because that was the correct answer. And then his puppet masters get a hold of him and say, Joe, your base is going to freak out if you don't condemn this verdict. So they put out this dopey statement where he's angry all of a sudden. He didn't look angry right there. And then he admits to the press.
Basically high-fiving the jury.
He says to the press that he hadn't even followed the trial. And then, like, what was it, last year, he says this guy's a white supremacist. He had never even watched the video of the shooting. You know what the difference was? Donald Trump watched the video of the shooting and was asked about it in the White House briefing room. And he says, you know what? Looks like he was running away from guys, fell, was violently attacked, and shot those guys in self-defense. I want it investigated. It should be investigated. But I think police departments should be doing that job, keeping the streets safe. That was the most honest assessment that we've heard from a politician. Yet the media fact checkers just Pinocchio'd the hell out of that statement. And then that statement became a lie. And where are the fact checkers with Joe Biden? Are they going to say that Rittenhouse is not a white supremacist? They'll never say that. So I've talked about this before, the axis of evil, all right? You have the press, the prosecutors, and the politicians. They get together and they just create a tornado of lies and turmoil that rips through a city like a Kenosha, leaves death and destruction in its wake, and then everybody else is left to pick up the pieces. Kyle's crying. The city's now in debt because their places of work are burnt down, and the country's like at each other's throat over racial animosity. Meanwhile, there's no black guy involved in the shooting. Yet Al Sharpton releases a statement today and says, it's just another reminder of, black Americans being shot. No black American was shot by Kyle Rittenhouse. And that's what people think still to this day.
Can Kyle Rittenhouse sue a sitting president for statements that he made when he was a private citizen and a candidate?
That is what Lynn Wood, Kyle Rittenhouse's prior attorney, aimed exactly to do, because at that time, obviously, it was before he was sitting, and Bill Clinton taught us that, yes, you can sue a president for acts prior to assuming the presidency. I have to point out that, to your point, Biden used that in a campaign ad to galvanize support and votes, to play into the lie that you were talking about earlier, that arson and looting and violence is peaceful protesting, that rioting is peaceful assembly, that this trial was somehow good versus fascism and racism and white supremacy. And the governor of Wisconsin furthered that today in his statement when he said no verdict will be able to bring back the lives lost, no verdict can heal the wounds or trauma experienced by Jacob Blake and his family. No mention at all of the sacred duty that jurors hold, no good job to the jury, no anything of that. The DA's office weighed in and said certainly issues regarding the privilege of self-defense remain highly contentious in our current times. To your point, all this is a narrative, a ball that was being batted around the nation the entire time, and it was created by and amplified by the media, elected officials, politicians, reporters, social media, and the like. And there has been absolutely no accountability for it, no responsibility, even far after all of it has been debunked. But we're going to continue hearing that. We will never have the truth brought to light of this trial. It will never be covered fairly, no matter what, because this is being furthered, as we just saw, by the president, and as we just heard, by the vice president as well.
So obviously, burning things down doesn't work. Destroying businesses, vandalism, theft, none of that works. It doesn't make anything better. If you look at the state of crime and police departments being refunded, I know we're going to talk about that later in the show. So what can Kenosha do now?
Well, I think Kenosha is already doing it. If you pay attention to what's happening on the ground in Kenosha, the people of Kenosha are coming together. They've rebuilt their community. They really are working hard to move past both the shooting of Jacob Blake and what in this Kyle Rittenhouse case. But where I take issue with what Emily's saying here is, this idea that this idea that we can move beyond it, or this idea that the media is not doing a good job. There's a lot of reporters who've been covering this case from day one. Sarah Seidner is one of those reporters who today said, when she said what Joe Biden said about white supremacy, that's a lie. It was debunked. It was completely debunked. And so there's a number of good journalists who have been on the ground in Kenosha from when the shooting happened until this verdict was rendered that have been covering this case both fairly and accurately, and they're worthy of getting the praise that they should for covering this the right way. Because to cover this trial correctly, you have to cover what's actually happening in the courtroom and cover the backdrop in which this case is happening, which is a backdrop in which for a lot of Americans, especially Black Americans, they believe there's two different justice systems. And until you have part of that lived experience and understand why they're upset, even though it doesn't play into exactly what's happening in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, you don't understand their anger.
There was a case in Texas, I could be wrong, so like last month, where one of these high school kids, I think, killed someone with a gun, and he was just out on bail the next day. And people say, oh, there's, different levels of justice. I can throw another case right back in your face. It doesn't have anything to do with race, Richard. This case has nothing to do with race inside the courtroom. You can make up a theoretical case to prove your point.
No, I could talk
but
about.
that's just not true.
I could talk about Julius Jones, who was convicted, who was murdered.
Let's bring Greg in.
Okay, OJ got off. Okay, OJ got off.
I know that people forget about this, but Jacob Blake was a good shoot, right? Right? You gonna agree with me? The guy was holding a knife.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
and the officers were exonerated.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
He was shot in the back.
Oh, my God. It's so sad because he was holding a knife trying to kidnap a woman and her kids. That's what police officers do.
He was shot in the back 7 times.
The DOJ determined
he was
that
trying to harm a woman. If you're okay with that, I guess you're okay with that. All right. I find it ironic, though, that Biden woke up from his colonoscopy to this verdict. His ass literally got handed to him. Lawyer up, Joe, because that kid better sue your butt.
He should sue everybody who...
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It's interesting. If the shoe were on the other foot, there would be an impeachment proceeding.
That's not true.
President Trump would single out
Central Park 5.
President Trump what are you talking?
President Trump full-page ad against Central Park 5.
There was no president who went after the Central Park 5. Joe Biden singled out a person, a citizen, influenced the case, called him a white supremacist. I will put it on this. Biden is probably not in control of his words or his faculties. Clearly somebody else is pushing this stuff. And I do believe he's not following the case. Somebody else is doing it. But, if the argument about this, no blacks were shot, these were white men, they will come back at you and they will say, activists will say, well, they were defending blacks.
Yeah, the guy that used the N-word. The guy that used the N-word.
Yeah. Do you want those to be your defenders? A pedophile and a domestic abuser. Do you want that to be your shield? What a stupid argument.